All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is the last part of a four-part series that we did on wills and trusts. And there's not a lot of overly new information, but just again, the importance of understanding the impact of proper estate planning, wills, trusts, powers of attorney, things of that nature. You know, I've found in my career that we as human beings have a hard time envisioning our own illnesses or even death, right? You're like, try and keep healthy, but I'm okay today, and it's not tomorrow, right? And they're not pleasant thoughts, right? So human beings in general have a hard time with that internalization. Someday, whatever your belief system is, we are going to pass, right? If your belief is into heaven, you meet your God, meet your maker, God bless. Hopefully that is a transition that is comfortable and not painful. However, the affairs that we leave behind, I always akin to, dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And the person I've coined this expression, I heard this a long time ago. The person you are today is the person that's going to take care of you in the future. So it is important to sometimes peel back layers of uncomfortable conversations to make sure that what you want to have happen does in fact happen. Hope is not a plan. I hope things get figured out, because again, we just need to look around us, and I can cite many examples where people never approach the subject, and it ended up devastating the wealth that had been accumulated. Now everything's not about money. But the transfer of assets are really going to go to one of three places. They're going to go to a loved one, they're going to go to a charity, or they're going to go to a government. Choice is yours, right? So with a little bit of forethought, a little bit of planning, we can take steps to make sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. So we've been over this topic, recorded on 7/7, 8/11, and 8/25. We put these on YouTube, so you can go back and review them so we can get into the details. But today we're going to talk about legacy planning options for widowers and widows, the importance of having a custom estate plan, some key points and action steps. Again, not a lot of meat here, but just more top of mind, presence of mind, right? We've been talking about Sean and Mary Williams, and we use 58 years old. I'm 58 years old, and I'm pretty certain that I'm going to wake up tomorrow, but I don't have 100% certainty. But I can tell you that my affairs are pretty much in order. Maybe a little bit of loose ends, but things that I know need attention. But I can tell you that most folks that I sit with and start to have these conversations with, they are not in good order. I just had a conversation with somebody who found me on Facebook here in Allentown, and a young couple just had a baby. And I asked her, what prompted you to reach out to me and to start to think about financial planning? And it was this topic here. She goes, I knew we recently got married that we should do something, but we really don't know what to do. And now with the newborn, and that's usually a catalyst for most people, that they have a newborn, that they're starting to raise a family, they're starting to accumulate assets. And then as we move along, they do some planning in the early years, and then they put it in a drawer and they forget about it. And then life happens, and now our children are in their high school or college years, starting families of their own. And, you look back and you're like, oh my God, how quickly that happened, how quickly they've grown. My second oldest daughter is going to be a sophomore. Blows my mind. I'm like, stop growing. But I will tell you that part of the reason I'm so emphatic and passionate about the things that we do is because I lost my father at 54. Young man. 54. I can tell you, I was faced with my own mortality when I was 52, 53. I started thinking to myself, I could not help but stop thinking about how early he died and would I make it past him, right? And I don't think like that so much anymore, but the thoughts are there. And, as I have younger children, and now I start to think about, I have grandchildren and I'm going to eventually have more grandchildren. And I'm like, oh my God, right? This is the realities of life. So does all the things that I've built go to the people I love, or does the government step in and take it? So that's what we've been talking about. That's why when we talk about Sean and Mary Williams and the different effects that their planning could have, right? Last call, how assets pass on Sean's death, right? They had no plan. So we're just going to go down this column to the left first. No plan. He had joint assets will pass to Mary, IRAs and life insurance will pass to the beneficiaries. One of the things that I talked about of late, and keep this in mind, is most of these things are going to require a death certificate. And that's why I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and I had quite a few people that were interested in the liquidity plan where you can create a small amount of cash, 15, 20, 30, 40, even $100,000 of cash within 24 to 48 hours. Because there's a number of things that you think you're putting in place, but they don't exactly work the way that you thought that they did. We'll touch base on that a little bit. So Sean's assets must pass through probate if he doesn't have any plan. So that's another way of saying that everybody can see what you had. Everybody can inquire. Nosy Nelly next door is going to know all your assets, what you had. The state's rules apply intestacy. Family may fight over control and asset distribution. That I find interesting because, again, I've talked about it last time, and I think it bears repeating. Money makes people funny. And people that may not necessarily have been the primary beneficiary of your estate where you wanted money to go to, and every family dynamic is different, right? That's the other thing, is that you turn around and you go, how do you keep things in the bloodline? Right? Divorce is over 50% in this country. So, your children get married, they have children, and then your child passes. So what was your plan to keep things in the bloodline, right? Because now the remaining spouse decided they needed that money, decided they wanted a new Ferrari, Corvette, and they spend it. So, things happen. So, you can do a lot to prevent a lot of that. Assets will be passed to spendthrift children or to kids, others, creditors. And the fees and costs, right? 3 to 8%. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it does add up. All right, if you just did a will plan, right? You wrote an I love you will, you put it on a napkin, you signed it, got some witnesses. So the joint assets will pass to Mary, retirement assets will pass to the beneficiaries. Sean's assets must still pass through probate. Sean's will appoints the personal representative. So now, at least on the napkin, you can say, hey, I want my next door neighbor to monitor the affairs, right? Sean's wills determine who gets what, how, and when, right? And that's when the person that shows up with the suitcase says, hey, I'm here to read to you the will. The will might have created asset protection for his loved ones. Again, still an expensive model. Having a trust in place, and there's, like I said, there's ad nauseum, the kinds of trust you can have, but something even as simple as a revocable trust. So if properly funded, Sean's assets, even joint, will remain in the trust. And that's important just because from a creditor protection, from a liquidity standpoint, there's a lot of benefits to that. Retirement assets pass to the beneficiary or trust. I am not a big fan of moving. I've done it a couple times. I've seen some estate plannings use it as a planning attorney. It is cumbersome moving it through something called the conduit trust, right? Can be done, not an attorney, not giving legal advice. I'm just saying that my experience has been, it's a little clunky, right? So probate is avoided if trust is properly funded. That's the key. That's really, when you say to yourself, why are we doing a trust? It really, the way I always explain it is, it's a box where you put in a set of instructions and you've moved assets into. You have control of that box while you're alive, while you're able to make decisions. And then you can say, hey, I want this to happen, this to happen. You can, in essence, rule from the grave, right? Now, trust determines fiduciaries and distribution scheme based on the grantor's wishes. Family is giving clear instructions, minimizing likelihood of fights. Now you have it in writing. This is what mom wanted. This is what dad wanted. So that's the benefit too. Trust can also provide asset protection. That's also state dependent too. Trust can, for the spouse and kids from creditors and predators, and it's usually less expensive to go this route. Okay. Now, Sean and Mary's in poor health, widowed for several years, right? So this changes things. So Sean's already passed. Now we've lost some opportunity to do some joint planning. Now we're left with Mary, and her health is deteriorating. A will or no will plan, assets lost to the nursing home. So that's where Medicare, Medicaid spend down, qualifications, all those things that I've talked about in the past, the creditors are going to start to look at. Here's how they view this, you know, and having gone through this with my grandmother, right? I saw it firsthand. My grandfather built the house in Miami, Florida, and then he got sick, went into a nursing home. Now, he turned around, he died in there, but my grandmother had to sign over the house that she was still living in. Now, they didn't kick her out, but she stayed there for a few more years until she got sick. And my mom had to ship her up to North Branch. And in North Branch, as soon as they shipped her up to North Branch, they sold the house and the nursing home got it. So, you know, once you see and experience this, that's what I call the confiscation of wealth in this country. It happens. It can be prevented with planning. That's why I'm doing these calls. That's why I'm talking about this stuff, so that you can keep more of your assets that you've amassed over time in your family's circle of wealth, that you have control, and that you can then distribute that to people that you love and care about. So retirement assets will pass to the beneficiaries upon death. Probate for assets which remain in her name at her death. State rules might apply, right? Family may fight over control. There's that old word, right? Fighting and control. Assets will be passed to a spendthrift child, right? Will not avoid federal or state death taxes, and it can be expensive. If you have a revocable trust plan, this is the one that I think has the most flexibility, right? This is where I tend to lean towards for most of my clients, because right now with the current estate tax law, right, each person, each taxpayer in this country is afforded, it's about $11.4 million estate tax exemption. If you're married, now you're at $22-23 million before you start paying estate taxes. Well, unless your estate is in north of that you probably don't need to think about complex trusts. But that's in today's tax environment. I see many, many trusts where they've been funded in ILITs or irrevocable trusts, and they were done, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the estate taxes were $675 initially, and then went up to like $2 million. And then by the end of 2010, they were up to like $10 million. And now we have this very large, right, sort of, it seems like impossible hurdle to ever achieve. And you go, well, I don't need to do that. But then what is the government notorious for doing? Changing the laws. And they're starved. I mean, they're spending money. I talk about this all the time. They are handing out money. What did they do last week? Student loan relief, right? I just look at this stuff and I go, if the government in an effort to buy votes and is doing this stuff, and they're just handing and printing money and doing all this stuff, and nobody's worried about it. Think about it logically. Where are the areas where they come back? Because if you run a business or if you're a household and you're balancing your checkbook, if you don't have the money, you can't spend it, right? So unless you put it on a credit card debt, at some point in time, a credit card is going to say to you, hey, you're at your limit. You can't do anymore. That's what Congress does. Well, now you turn around and you say, hey, look, I can't get any more money. The government's going to go, we've taxed everybody we possibly could. We've handed out everything we could to secure our political position. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to go to IRAs, 401ks, and TSPs. Those are the areas that they have not taxed yet. That's one area. The second is estate taxes. They're going to lower those ceilings from 11 million back down to, I don't know, whatever number, million, 2 million. And then when they're taxed at 50, 60, 70%. So think about it. All the life insurance you bought, all the annuities you have, all the real estate you've been buying, all gets thrown into one big pot. They total it up. You exceed that number, and everything after that gets taxed to the person that you're giving it to. That's an insane system. That's the way it was. That's what's going to come back. And if you're not aware of and doing proper estate planning, that's what irrevocable trusts do. But revocable trusts allow us to keep some control while we're doing that. And that's why, this is why the majority of people that I talk to, this is the area that we should focus on. But don't dismiss an irrevocable trust because I said the number 11 million or 22 million, it's not applicable. That's today. That doesn't mean 5 years from now or 10 years from now, now I'm 68 and we got a whole new rule. So sorry to go off on a tangent. All right, so assets lost to the nursing home, long-term care needs. Retirement assets will pass to the beneficiaries upon death. Probate is avoided if trust is properly funded. Trust determines fiduciaries and distribution scheme. Family giving clear instructions, minimizing likelihood of fights. Trust can provide asset protection for kids from creditors. Divorce will not avoid federal or state death taxes, but we've lowered the cost. So these two things, I'm not going to get into the irrevocable trust because, again, most people, it's not going to be relevant today. But I just got somebody handed me a contract to look at today that was done a few years ago, $5 million second to die, that's inside of an islet. Right. So should it be replaced? Right. I don't know. Their net worth is not worth 22 million. They're worth 8 or 9 million. So, it's like what they did, is it still relevant today? But I'll never tell somebody to cancel insurance. Right. It's typically that's risky. Right. And I don't want the liability. So what's next? Recognize the importance of having your own customized estate plan. Dust off and update your plan every few years. Although an unpopular or uncomfortable topic, pull it out, stay on my calls, reach out to me. Let's just have a candid conversation, because I'm always going to ask you, what do you want to happen? You tell me what you want to have happen, and I'll tell you the best way to do it. Right? So you have the law, you have estate planning strategies, you have your family circumstances, your financial circumstances, your health, and your residency. So you're here. If you're in New Jersey, most people are moving. Well, what are the rules of the state you're moving to? Right? So think about it. These are things that with a little bit of planning, we can dot our I's and cross our T's. So key points to remember: consider the advantages and disadvantages of a will-only estate plan. Don't ignore the financial needs you will have during your lifetime. That's the hard part. Like I was talking about earlier, it's very difficult. I was talking to my son about this today. His grandmother is not well. She is pretty much bedridden. She can't speak, can't write. She's in her 80s. And she cannot get out of bed. So she has to eat and evacuate in the same place. It's a very sad state. You think about it. And I said, listen, that is the cycle of life. That is reality. It's hard, right? And, we can hang on. And that's why I always will say, you'll hear me on these calls say, hug the ones you're with. There are no guarantees. There's so much craziness going on in this world today that we have to make sure that we stop, smell the roses. Don't get caught up in the nonsense that's going on in the world, the TV, the media. Turn off the TV, turn off the radio. It's just gloom and doom constantly. There is so much beauty out in this world, and we can make the world a better place. But take care of the people that are around you. Take care of the people that you care about. Make sure that your instructions are clear, right? And consider the tax implications of different transfer strategies. Action steps: be prepared. I was a Boy Scout, be prepared, right? I still think about that all today, right? I have a bug out bag in my truck. I hope nothing ever goes bad. But if things go nuts, I can tell you I'm getting out of Dodge, and I got some things that I could live off the land if I had to. That's my mindset. Not everybody's wired that way, but it took Hurricane Sandy for me to start to think, oh my God, when there was a breakdown in society here in New Jersey, I had a front porch view of what was going on in a societal breakdown. And I said, I will not be caught off guard. So that's just if the world is, things are going and become chaotic. Well, what if they just systematically, the deterioration of our planning, right? That, because of our health, because of the government regulations, because of taxation, that all the things that you thought were okay, you can't ignore them. So review your existing estate planning documents, review your assets ownership to determine, this is the one, joint beneficiary TOD status. So, one of the things I hear sometimes when I'm talking about a liquidity plan is, I have a transfer on death. You need a death certificate for that. Well, I have a POD, a payable on death. You need a death certificate for that. Well, I have life insurance. You need a death certificate for that. Well, I have an annuity. You need a death certificate account. Well, I have these brokerage accounts. You need, in any qualified plans, you need a death certificate. If you think about it and having gone through it, if you don't have some liquidity, right? You have 3 children. One lives in California, one lives in Florida, and one's here close by. The person that's close by, you pass away, they got to now flip the bill for you to get buried. And now they got to go after the estate or, the other siblings and hope they get repaid. These are little things that really nobody wants to give attention to. Oh, my kids are good. They're not like that. They're well off. They won't have to worry about that. I've found that's not to be true, right? We have a responsibility that whatever we've amassed, whatever we want to have happen, make it as easy as possible. So review your current beneficiary designations. I've talked about this before, but I had a client in my office that had gotten remarried, and we were looking at their old MetLife, and we called up MetLife. And in the verification and validation conversation part of the phone call, they said, who's your beneficiary on your account? And he named his current wife. And they go, that's incorrect. He had forgotten when he got divorced to change his ex-wife. Now that's since been corrected, and good thing his current wife was not in the room. But those are the types of things that, just dealing with a financial advisor that is thorough, that will help you to sort of peel back the layers of complexity and not make it so painful. Consider the advantages of a will based on a plan versus a trust-based plan or an irrevocable plan as discussed. Recognize the importance of creating your own tailored estate plan, and recognize that that the plan you create today will determine the legacy you leave tomorrow, right? So last thing, are you prepared? I'm not going to read the whole checklist to you. You have to go through and look at this, and we're going to have this recorded because in the spirit of time, I've gone a little long, so we're a little longer than I thought this would go. But, I've talked about this before. I haven't talked about it recently. But if you want to do some type of estate plan, wills, trusts, things of that nature, we have a virtual version. Now, one of the challenges with doing this for me across state lines is having a notary that is mobile. It can be expensive to, $300 on top of this to have a notary come. And so they have to witness signatures. You got to get witnesses. So it's still a little clunky. So, maybe just going to a local estate attorney in your area, right? But if you're in New Jersey, if you've been wanting to put wills, trusts, powers of attorney, healthcare directives, things in place, I am not an attorney. All this does is I act as the administrator. Keith in my office is a notary. We do all this via Zoom, we witnesses, and then we send the documents to everybody for signing. So if it's something you're interested, let us know. Upcoming weeks, September, which is today is September 1st, is Life Insurance Awareness Month. I am absolutely convinced, and life insurance is not a 4-letter word. It is absolutely, I think, properly structured and created the greatest gift Congress has ever given the American taxpayer. The problem is most people that have it view it as an expense. They bought it at a time in their life where maybe they bought the wrong type or it wasn't funded correctly. So I'm going to be talking next week, 9/8. I'm going to go in and I'm just going to bring up one of the carriers I use, and I'm going to take you on a live call through building out an illustration. And some of the thoughts that go through on my mind, how I build an illustration for a client. I just did one for an existing client where the mom is buying it for a 22-year-old son to help him put away money for retirement. These are all things that are possible, right? So, when you understand what the options are, the alternatives versus a properly structured cash value life insurance, I have not found a better product to help protect families achieve their goals through life. So no call on 9/15. 9/22 September will be perfect. We'll see where, obviously 9/11 will usually cause a little volatility in the market, but 9/22 I'll be back and we'll be able to look at rear sight how August did and where the market is now, and then no call 9/29 and we'll get into October. These are the disclosures. They make me put all this stuff up there. And you can, if you got good eyesight or you're a fast reader, go ahead and catch that. If not, go ahead and read it on the YouTube. And then if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I really do value each and every one of you that are taking time each week to reach out, hop on a call. Hopefully that just makes me feel good, because it means, hey, I'm saying something that's relevant, right? If there's a topic that you want to hear about, something that you think I need to expand upon, let me know. I've been doing this now, since COVID hit, and I don't mind doing it. And as long as you guys keep showing up, then I'll keep speaking. So everybody on the call, I want to thank you all again for showing up. And then again, if you have any questions for me, just reach out, and have a great day. Hey, have a happy Labor Day, and be safe and eat some barbecue. I smoked some ribs last week for my daughter's birthday, and it was a lot of fun. I hadn't done that in a while. All right, guys, bye-bye.